Greetings Guzzlers, we're going to do some baking. We're going to make a traditional Polish sort of yeast cake, if you like. It's a bit like a strudel. This is a poppy seed roll, and it's like a bready cake with a poppy seed filling. Okay, talk about the poppy seed in a bit once we get to that stage. Makowiec, probably not pronounced that quite right, but that's the traditional name of this traditional sweet treat, if you like. So we're going to start off by making our dough. So I've already activated my yeast. I've got 4 grams of active dry yeast, and I've added some warm milk to that. Now I had 160 mils of warm milk, and a quarter of that went in with the yeast about 10 minutes or so ago. In my bowl of my mixer, I've already got me plain flour, not bread flour, just plain flour, 480 grams of that. I'm going to want some sugar, some eggs, some melted butter, a little bit of salt. I think that's it. So into my flour, I'm going to add a quarter teaspoon of fine salt. I've got 75 grams of sugar. In that goes. I'll put the remaining warm milk in there. And then I'm going to put my yeasty mixture. I'm going to take to give that a little bit of a mix with. Make sure I get my yeast in there. Melt with butter. I'm trying to think what I'm doing with that. In that goes. And then the final thing is we want to do 3 eggs in there. That's all in there now. And now I'm just going to put the paddle attachment on. And I'll turn the power on this time. Yep. And we just want to mix all that together till it's come together as one sort of solid dough. It will be a sticky dough. Well, it should be. So you can see there it is quite a wet dough, but it's nice and smooth now. I will just double check there's no lumps on the bottom, give it a bit of a scrape. But what we're going to do is now scrape that out. Apology for the washing machine, she's overloaded it again. We're now going to scrape that into a greased bowl, and we're going to then let it do its initial sort of rise, if you like. So there it is in the bowl. We're now just going to give it a little light dusting of some flour. Comes out a bit heavy. And we're going to cover that, put it somewhere warm for about 45 minutes to an hour. At which point we'll be ready to start rolling it out, and you're going to need your poppy seed paste. Right, that's had about 55 minutes. That hasn't risen an awful lot. Now we're just going to remove that, and we want to tip that out onto a floured surface. You can see it's still very, very sticky dough, and what we want to do is divide that. Now we could use this to make one big roll, but it might be a little bit easier if we divide this up, which is easier said than done. I'm just going to put that to one side, and then we're going to need to add some more flour. And you're going to need your scraper for this. We're essentially wanting to knock this back, even though there wasn't that much air in it. And then we're going to roll it as best we can into a rectangle. Now, I told you this is a traditional treat, if you like. It used to be primarily just for Easter and Christmas, but it is so well liked, you will find it basically available anywhere, anytime you want. It's going to need a lot of flour on this. Now, I told you it's a poppy seed roll. It's filled with a poppy seed paste. Now, this makes it a little bit of almost like a scandal, if you like, because poppy seeds are sources of opiates, like your heroin and stuff like that. Now, what is important is that poppy seeds that you use in your cooking are very low in these opiates. They're varieties that they're so low that you can eat all this lot, this paste I've got here, and you ain't going to get high. But you might fail a drugs test. So it's not a good idea to eat lots of this before you're going to go potentially and have a drug test. Which I know you don't routinely do, but if you were going for a job interview for something that they might want to just check that you're not a drug user, don't have this. Right, so I've spread that out. Now you're going to want some parchment paper because we're going to sort of loosely wrap it in that. Now, I now need to get my paste onto it. Now, I've made some earlier. You can buy this, as I think I've said. I've made about 500 grams. You're not going to need all of that. Probably about 300 grams or so. And what we do is we spread a generous layer, which is why you're probably going to want most of this, over this dough, but not quite up to the edges. Okay, I might end up using half of this, to be honest, all of this, and I'm just going to spread this out, and like I say, we want to leave a little bit of a gap at the edges. Now you could, sometimes this is traditionally supplemented with sort of chopped walnuts. There are Makowiec that are made without poppy seeds, I believe, and just sort of nuts, but the traditional one is with the poppy seeds. Now the poppies are a symbol of prosperity and everything else, but it also has roots in Christianity. It's said that poppies sprung up from the ground where, when Jesus was crucified, his blood, when it fell to the ground, sprouted poppy seeds. Now, what we now want to try and do, carefully, put that in there. I'll need some flour here. Now we just want to roll this up so the idea being that we've created like a Swiss roll, if you like, with this poppy seed mixture on the inside. So what might be easier is if I fold up those edges that way, and then we just want to fold over our ends so we've sealed that in there. Now the next tricky part is we're going to want to get this seam side down onto this paper. Okay, we're not wrapping it into, it doesn't matter if it goes right up to the edges. It's more just to try and help keep it in this shape. It doesn't really matter too much. In fact, actually some people put it in a loaf tin to try and keep shape right. So I'm just going to get that into there, and I'm not letting you watch me doing that. There's the second one rolled. Got it in the paper, and I'm just going to loosely again tuck that under there. We're not trying to constrain it. We're happy for it to expand, but what we're trying to do is trying to maintain it in that sausage shape. So now, got a lot of flour to clear up. That now wants to again prove you're going to need to put your oven on at 175, and we're going to be baking it for anything up to an hour, 45 minutes onwards. These are a little bit smaller than traditional ones. It might not take quite so long. I was telling you about obviously the poppy seeds in there. You've got to be careful because of the potential background of opiates, but you will find this all over Poland. Right, I'm going to have a little clean up, and then I'll see you in about 40. Okay, so they've had about 45-50 minutes. So I've just unwrapped these. They've spread a little bit sideways. But what we want to do at this point is just brush them with some melted butter. Now, I said to you about the sort of story about in Christian times about the poppy seed was associated with the blood of Christ, but actually in the sort of Slavic pre-Christian sort of myths, poppy seeds were seen, making foods containing poppy seeds was seen as a sort of a gateway between the living and the dead, probably because you're all bloody high. And equally, whoops, buttering the bloody paper. They would sometimes make dishes containing the poppy seeds to feed the dead, because it was felt that at certain times the dead would come back and revisit, and this was something to keep them happy. Right, so loosely folded that over. Now I'm going to put these in for 30 minutes because these are quite small ones, as it were. But it may need, like I say, almost up to an hour. So we're going to bake them through. And just final little note as I put these in the oven. In 1681, I think it was, a royal baker decided to impress the king, and he made one, and he decorated it in the likeness of the king's wife. The king thought that was hilarious. And then there was another Polish king who is said to have been given one that was over 4 meters long. Anyway, that's going in there, timer's on, and then when that's cooked, we'll bring it out and we let it cool. So you can see they're now out of the oven. So it's gone the golden brown that it's supposedly meant to. I need 2 spatulas for this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stuck on the end there. I'm just going to transfer this onto a wire rack. Now it has split along the top, as you can see, which is not meant to, and it appears buttering it hasn't actually made it go that nice golden brown colour that it supposedly was going to go. But now we need to let that cool because that filling will be very, very hot. And so when that's cooled, we'll give it a dusting of icing sugar, and then we'll slice it and we'll try it out. I've noticed towards the middle, it does look a little bit undercooked in the middle there. split didn't help. When you're slicing it, it tends to want to break up. But let's try this one here, because this is the one that's probably fallen apart the most. These are like a cakey rather than a biscuity sort of taste and texture. But the poppy seeds come through very strongly, which you'd expect they would do because there's a bloody lot of them in there. But it is sort of countered a little bit by that fruit, and you do get a little bit of that honey. It's the sort of thing you want served with something like coffee or something like that. This is still slightly warm, and actually it's quite nice that. But I should imagine, obviously most of the time you buy it, if you buy it, it's obviously not going to be warm. So might have to try another one later when it's cooled down a bit. But there you go. Your Polish poppy seed roll, properly known as the, I'll say this right, Makowiec. Cheers.